far too large to rightfully be called a sword. It was larger, thicker, heavier, and cruder than any normal blade. By all accounts, it was no more than a hulking mass of iron.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of DumpStat. I am the Lich. I am the one underneath your bed, in the closet, and down the stairs. I'm the one that will never, ever call you back, and don't call me daddy again. I am Brill, Arch Lich, who slurs occasionally. I'm also the Void and many other things. Next to me is my human captive, fighter, Doc. Hello, Doc.
I mean, I liked the addition of the white padded room. It's nice, but I'm gonna need my sword and bow back, please.
You're not getting that. Today we are going to go. I'm not actually sure what we're doing today.
Well, since I'm stuck in here and I've got some time, I actually figured I've got a question that's been nagging on me that I figured that you could answer. Yeah.
Yeah, what's going on?
So I figured you and infinite wisdom and power as a Lich could help. So I had a friend who had a question that I saw online in a kind of a discussion group, and I wanted to know your thoughts on it. I have some thoughts as well. This is what the question says. This comes from Kyler. Kyler, love you, man.
Mwah.
So how do you handle a player who likes to make characters inspired by / based on existing ones? How do you handle players who make it a habit of calling said player original? And this kind of comes from the idea of I'm not sure if our audience has seen this, but there's like stat blocks and things for people who have made characters based off the Avengers cast. So Iron Man, Captain America, Black Widow, everything like that. There's characters that are based on, the Overwatch characters, literally anything.
Right. People
say, hey, this is a cool aesthetic. I'm going to make a character that's based off that. Or they take, a concept off that, yada, yada. So what do you think? What's your call on that?
Well, first of all, if I answer their question, I get their soul. But
Ooh.
I will go over this. I mentioned this in episode 1, and I think this is an important point. Plagiarism is one of the cornerstones of creativity. And I personally am of the opinion that when you look through all of mythology, all stories, all pieces of authorship, you can basically walk up to it like a Scooby-Doo villain and rip off the mask and say, it was Dragon Ball the whole time, or whatever it might have been. There's an easy way to handle that. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Everything is something in disguise.
Mm-hmm.
But to make it more poignant to something with a player, I guess, I think there's this strange balance of you have a player who clearly sees something and likes something and wants to be of that thing, whether that's Captain America, like you mentioned, or Captain Jack Sparrow. But I think there is an issue of originality in the sense of if you are just doing an impression, I do think for some people that might wear thin, and that's why people might call you unoriginal.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that kind of balance, I think there is.
Yeah, and I think that for me personally, when I've run games and stuff, I feel like that having a person come up to you and be like, you know what, I love this about this character. I like this character's kind of attitude from the show that I've been watching, and I feel really inspired by that. And I'd like to make a character that's kind of like him. That's awesome, because that's a level of energy that I like to bring to the table. Whereas you don't always get that right off the bat when someone makes a new character. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Normally, when you have someone that's inspired like that, that's really great. I do agree with you that sometimes if this person has come back for the 30th time and says, hey, I made a new character, and this time it's SpongeBob SquarePants. And it's
I'm ready.
Yeah, and you're like, okay. So last week we had Kirito from Sword Art Online, but sure. So I think that there is an element of needing to balance that. But here's what I'll say about that, bro.
Mm.
Frankly, if they're having fun, I'm caring a little bit more than that about that, right? And
Right.
I think that in general, we're talking about 5th edition in general. I think we can touch on this a little bit later, but I think when you get into other editions, this is a different question. But I think in 5th edition, which it's kind of supposed to be high fantasy fun, kind of like loosey-goosey, smash some faces with a hammer kind of action.
Of course.
It's fun to design your characters after something else. And so generally speaking, I don't have a problem with that as long as it's not a 1-for-1 carbon copy.
Well, it's not just a 1-for-1 carbon copy. I think what really this question gets at the heart at is gatekeeping. I think many new players, when they arrive to Dungeons and Dragons, are going to make something that they know. They're going to make Aragon or something like that, and I almost said Aragog. That's the giant tarantula from Harry Potter. I was like,
Aragon.
They're just gonna have Hagrid's giant spider attack people. No, that's 20 characters down the line. But their first character is going to be a ranger. It's going to probably be an archetype for something. They might, let's say, be watching Full Metal Alchemist and love Armstrong, right? Or Strong Arm.
Yeah.
Armstrong, the guy who flexes a lot and punches things. That's a great barbarian base. And I think a lot of people might see that. Or All Might, for instance, if they're an anime fan. If we're going just to fantasy, they might look at Jon Snow from Game of Thrones and go, I like him. I like the way he walks. And I think this is a way for new players to make new characters. Their first character is probably going to be something that they've seen. I can safely say that Mrs. Lich, question mark, shush. I have a love life.
Now, wait a second. I haven't seen this character walking around the dungeons yet.
Shush. She doesn't come down here.
All right.
But when Mrs. Lich just decided to kind of get into D&D, her first few ideas were mainly based on characters and ideas that she'd seen in a lot of different mediums. For instance, I mean, one of them was almost straight 1-for-1 Maleficent from Sleeping Beauty. That was something that she immediately wanted to do. Now, did I chastise her? Yes, but for something else entirely, not about this. That was fine. I think that there is a way to go about it, and I do think it's a form of gatekeeping to tell someone that they're not original and that they can't play or they are doing it wrong. To say that you are doing D&D wrong is ridiculous.
Yeah. And I think just to note real quick, when we talk about gatekeeping, in case if anybody doesn't really know what that is, gatekeeping is kind of like, standing between someone who's new at something and that actual something and saying, no, you can't come in here because you're doing this wrong or you're like this. Generally, it's pretty discriminatory of just anybody. It's of their ideas, who they are as people. But back to that point.
It's a scourge on nerddom.
Yes.
Continue.
Yes. I think that there is something to be said for like, hey, like this is really kind of an ugly thing when you just say like, oh, well, your ideas suck. It's like, no, this person's ideas don't suck because they want to play Captain America. I built a character based off of Captain America because I just loved the heroism and I loved the idea of somebody being like, you know what, I don't have crazy superpowers, but I'm going to do this thing because it's, gosh darn it, it's the right thing to do. No swearing.
There's 1940 values, baby.
Yeah, and I really liked that about trying to play a character that was like that. And I know that a lot of other people, that's what they do with those characters. And I think that's great. I mean, like I said earlier, I think it brings an energy to the table. And people that are complaining about it being unoriginal, I think, are taking it too seriously. Like, yeah, if you want to make your completely, or try to make your completely original character for yourself, perfect. By all means, go ahead and try it. I'm literally going to be happier for you.
Right.
But as soon as you go over and say, oh, well, this guy's like Captain America, that's cheating. It's like, what is
cheating?
Cheating? Like,
what was weighted dice for Captain America? There's no cheating in D&D.
Right, exactly.
There's God and then there's you.
So that's kind of my take on that is.
I mean, in any fandom, and this is why I call it a scourge on nerddom,
Mhm.
is that this is something that we see pop up.
Mhm.
And when people are passionate about something and they hold it tight, they don't
Mhm.
want anything harming it. And sometimes that can evolve into anybody changing it.
Mhm. Mhm.
And when you got some kid coming in and he's like, "Hey, I just saw the Fairly Odd Parents movie and I am about to make Timmy Turner and Cosmo." And everyone's like, "I don't want that. I don't want that in my D&D.
Mhm.
I don't think we need that. Do you think we need that? I don't think we need that." That's not the game.
Mhm.
It's not Monopoly. You're not playing something like Jenga. There's no immediate rules like that. There is a
Yep.
person called the DM, and it is their discretion to figure out what is best for fun and play for their party. They
Mhm.
are a guide. And I think when it comes to gatekeeping, I understand the passion. I am a nerd through and through when it comes to many, many different fields.
Same seas.
I read comic books. I love games. I love tabletop games. And dare I say it, I like sports too. So there's a lot going there. I have a lot of passions and a lot of love, man. Just a lot of love to spray around. So when it comes to that, I kind of get it, but there has to be a way to mitigate that and for you to go, okay, maybe their character isn't my cup of tea.
Mhm.
Maybe it's my personal idea to create my own thing. But just because this guy really wants to play, Samurai Jack, I shouldn't get mad about that.
Mhm.
And also, by the way, superheroes are fun.
Yep.
Superheroes are cool
Yep.
bases to make characters.
Yeah.
Do you know how many characters I've kind of made a bit Thor-like?
I mean,
Like, I don't know, countless?
I can think of one from the top of my head that I've had a lot of experience with, but I know
I
that it has to be more.
Yeah, I'm looking at 3 or 4, and
Okay.
that's just because the aesthetic of lightning
Mhm.
and having a hammer to smite
It's
things
cool.
it's cool,
I
it's
mean,
sexy, I just dig it. I
yeah.
like it.
Yeah. No,
Let me smite things with my lightning hammer.
yeah.
Let me crush you.
I mean,
Come on.
when I built my Captain America character, spoilers for Endgame, I built him with a hammer because I just thought that
Ooh,
aesthetic of like shield and hammer and the gosh darn I'm doing the right thing is just like it's cool. I don't know. It's like it
it's
just
fun.
feels like this character shouldn't survive, but they're going to, and that's fun. Yeah.
Now, I think though there is a flip side to this,
Mm,
and I kind of want to give everybody's day in court, I guess.
sure.
I guess the counter to what we've just said is something akin to, well, what if them being a carbon copy becomes kind of an annoying impression?
Mm.
What happens when you have a guy who made a character? He made DD from Dexter's Laboratory. I don't know why Cartoon Network is just in my head, but he made
Dude, it's
DD. Better yet, let's say he made Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z,
Mhm.
and he's just doing a poor
He's just screaming.
kind of poor man's impression of Vegeta, like Kakarot, the whole thing. And it kind of grades on everybody else who may be like really trying to make something unique from themselves. Like they're the
Mhm.
odd man out in the party. What kind of happens then?
Yeah. So I can think of at least two things, and maybe you can think of a third thing, but I can think of setting and tone being an issue. And so I'll start off with setting, right? If you're creating a high fantasy standard D&D campaign, and then you get a character dropped in who's like, oh yeah, I'm playing this character who is what's the main character of Guardians of the Galaxy?
That would be Peter Quill, Star
Okay.
Lord.
So let's play you're playing a standard Dungeons and Dragons high fantasy game. And one of your characters comes to the table and says, I am playing Popper Quill, the Star Lord Omega, off of Peter Quill,
Right,
Star
right.
Lord.
Chris Pratt is playing at your
Yeah.
table. Right.
And
It's all he knows.
And then you're kind of stuck there with like this setting wise, like this kind of is a weird fit because over there's a guy with a sword, and then over there's a guy slinging magic, and then over here is a standard fantasy rogue who's got the cloak and dagger and everything. But now you've come in and you've turned your light crossbows into laser guns, and your spells are now bombs. And what?
Right.
Like that.
The skin is weird.
Yeah, the skin is weird on that. And I think that if you are building a character that is based off someone, great, awesome, do it. But just be mindful that there's likely 4 other people, that is your 3 other players and your DM, that are playing the game too, and they may want an experience that's a little bit more setting specific than that.
Right.
Clear it with your DM, because like maybe, I don't know, maybe your high fantasy settings does have bombs and laser guns and, Star-Lord in it.
Well, you have to give Chris Pratt that. He's a shell of a man if he can't be Star-Lord. That's all he has.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, no offense, Chris Pratt, but
wouldn't that be funny if like all the Avengers like cast, if they can only play that, and if they don't, they just like, well, I mean, that's actually kind of Robert Downey Jr. right now.
Yeah.
Anyways, keep going.
Yeah, so I think that it's very important to consider what the setting is, and instead of just making the carbon copy, kind of say, how can I make this character functionally Star-Lord, in our example, just in a fantasy setting, right? There's still
right, with personality, it's probably a bard, frankly. Yeah. There's a way to finagle it.
Yeah, and
a bard ranger.
Yeah, and a bard ranger, definitely. You could do something where, I mean, clear it with your DM, but he was captured by people from another plane of existence and brought there, and you could do the Githyanki, and then the Githyanki trained him to fight and work for them until he escaped and returned to the material plane. Like, that's pretty Star-Lord-esque, but it's still in D&D. Just finding ways that you can find those pillars of the character and then making them specific to the setting. I find that actually people find that to be really cool because they see those kind of nods to the original character and they're like, cool, I see what you did there. And then you move on and then you have fun.
And again, it's a Scooby-Doo mask. Like every creative thing. When you rip off Gandalf's Scooby-Doo mask, you're going to see Odin. And when you rip off Odin's Scooby-Doo mask, you're going to see the old man in the sky. And you just keep going. I mean, that's a process of creativity. But what you just said is taking that character or the essence of that character, maybe the persona, maybe the alignments, maybe something along the lines that is definitely of them, taking it, remixing it, and making sure it fits a world okay. Just ripping, like you said earlier, SpongeBob out of the television show and just placing him in D&D, as hilarious as that first session might be. I promise you that it's not a campaign.
You're going to see some
that cannot run for 20 sessions.
You're going to see a TPK at some point. Just like, no, this whole thing has to go.
Someone is going to kill SpongeBob. There's going to be a Lich, and it might be me, but they will kill SpongeBob. But DMs, you should also kind of keep a lookout for this. If you have a player who's a bit of a gatekeeper, I won't mention names, but I had one player who, it was her first time playing D&D, and she wanted to play, the Drider?
Yeah.
The Drider? There are these drow spider people.
Yeah.
Drider. Yeah. Wow, spiders. A lot of spiders this episode. Boy. I'm sorry. Aragog, but I really want to watch that scene where he has his funeral in the 6th book again. So long, Aragog. Slughorn's the best. No, but she wanted to be a Drider, and almost as soon as she said that, 2 other players who were very fresh to D&D basically said, "You can't do that. You can't. You can't." And they tried to explain to her as to why. Now, I was the old grizzled veteran, and I was like, you don't get to tell her what she can and can't play. I'm God, and you have the power trip. But then I explained to her like what she wanted to do. And it turns out, frankly, all she wanted to do was be a drow who was committed to Loth and, stab things, which is way possible. Even if she wanted to be a Drider, I probably would have tried to make it work for her first
Yeah.
time, considering the fact that one of my first characters ever was a Mind Flayer.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Whew.
Huh?
Yeah, no, you're good.
Yeah. 3.5, my DM. I mean, like a child, like a toddler. I went through the monster manual. He just had it, and I was like flipping through it. And I know his intention was to be like, "See, doesn't it look cool?"
Right.
And I wanted to be a dick and just point at something and go, "I want to be that." Now, luckily, my DM was really hip to my shit.
Yep.
And kind of called me on it. And he's like, all right, I'll make it work. And he did. And let me tell you, it's very hard to walk through a town as a Mind Flayer. It's very hard to be the rogue Mind Flayer from Legend. There was a lot of expectations on me. And it wasn't the nicest.
And that is super awesome. If I'm thinking that if I had a player do that for like my setting, my campaign, if I had a player come and say, I want to be a Mind Flayer, I'd try to give them a look at first, but I would ask them, yeah, I would ask them a question, right? Why?
Right.
And it's like, is it because they want to be a super evil bad guy? Okay, well, there's a couple of ways that we can make that work. Like, I could make you a Mind Flayer, but we can also use other stats and things like that to do that. Or if it's like, I just really like the concept of Mind Flayer, and I want to kind of be a Mind Flayer exile who's kind of removed himself from the hive mind. And if someone came to me with that, I would be like, yeah, let's make it work. Hearing out those players and what they have to say, even if it's going to be a little bit of a scrape to put it into your setting, it's worth at least listening to. Right. Because even if you're the type of DM that's going to say, no, you can't be a Mind Flayer in this campaign, by asking why, you can at the very least get an idea of what they want to do that's fun for them, which is a huge part of the game, is arranging everybody's fun. So at least listen to them up to that point.
I mean, if they want to be 3 gnomes in a trench coat, I'll listen.
Yeah.
And by the way, I think that originality, unoriginality thing, it's kind of funny when you look through players what role the player is, because if you're a player and you try to do that, you might have other players say that's unoriginal. Look at your DM's campaign. Really look at it.
Yep.
Is there really all that much shit original? Yeah. It's all based on movies and TV shows and Gary Gygax and things that they've just absorbed over time. I think there are remixes. I don't think there's anything all that new under the sun. The bad guy, one of the main bad guys for a campaign I did recently, I wanted him to be Aku from Samurai Jack.
That's awesome.
And I did Aku from Samurai Jack. And it worked well.
That sounds amazing.
My players, since they weren't as cultured as me, when it comes to cartoons. I had a little bit of a one up on them. They're just like, wow, what an amazing, what an amazing villain. And I'm like, what an amazing steal. Right. If you took the Scooby-Doo mask off, I gave you a magic sword, for fuck's sake. Only thing that can defeat him. Time travel the works. I did Samurai Jack and I did Aku. And I mean, I've used other characters too in my campaigns. I have an NPC that's basically Uncle Iroh. I had one character that was essentially Popeye the Sailor Man. I had another guy who was essentially Naruto, basically. You can just go through the list. And then you have, basic farmer A, B, and C for fantasy. And you're like, oh, who are they based on? Oh, all the characters from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. That's what they're based on. So you can say that, you're unoriginal for what you've created. But at the same time, I think you need to really sit down and wonder what is being made, what is being said, and what is important. And the important thing is, at the end of the day, a game. It's fun.
I definitely agree with that. It being a game, and as long as you're not just destroying your DM's kind of setup,
Life.
right, and life, right, then I think if you talk to your DM and they're a good DM, then they should be able to work with them. And if you're a DM, you should be willing to work with your players on kind of the how and whys of that character and making them possible. Because at the end of the day, what's going to matter is this is getting into some philosophy and personal values, but
and drop that intelligence, baby.
So at the end of the day, like, it's not going to matter whether you had 3 knights and Naruto that stormed the castle and, saved the princess in your campaign. It's going to matter that your people at the table had fun and that they feel like friends and together because of that experience. I have a tear in my eye. But like, seriously, like, it's a fantasy world. It's not actually going to matter, but those experiences that you keep with your friends.
This is make believe.
Yeah, like the friendships that you're harvesting and improving from that is the thing that's going to matter. So, like, don't shoot somebody down and call them an original idiot because they want to play Naruto or SpongeBob or whatever. Like, just figure something out with them.
There is a difference, though, if you hate another person's character concept, not in like an original sense, but let's say you played with somebody and their character, it might be a voice you don't like, it might be an action they don't like, or you don't like, or maybe like the character's kind of a murder hobo and just you're in a party with a murder hobo and he stabs people. These are discussions to have with your DM if they get out of hand. I can also suggest talking with that other player politely and being like, hey, your character is kind of ruining my character's fun. Maybe is this compatible right now as a party? That's a whole different basket and discussion. But I feel like those kind of issues are more merited because they might fall under toxic traits that a player may or may not have, or a character may or may not have. For instance, I get rogues steal money.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
I get that. Now, over time, if you have one member of the party constantly taking your loot, over time, not only will that in-game grind some gears, I'm pretty sure out of game that might grind some gears.
Oh yeah.
And that can develop into something weird. I mean, I've had very mature players kind of break down at each other over some of the smallest shit that you've ever heard of. Not even like in-game, out of game. Like, I had this one guy just go, hey, could you just not do the voice? That is the most annoying voice ever. We're here for hours, man. That is just the worst voice. And I was like, oh, okay, that guy's here. Oh God. I don't want to bring y'all back to second grade, but communicate. It's the best way. I know we're nerds. I know we like to hunker down. We like to look at sheets and lore and not talk to people. I get it. I live under a mountain. I steal souls. But you do need to communicate with your DMs and maybe other players if you have a problem, and be an adult. Okay? It's a game. Don't get too heated. Be kind. You can get into it. I've seen people get competitive. I've seen people get crazy. Sad, happy. It's a story. You're invested. I get it. But at the same time, at no point should you be standing over a bunch of sheets and some dice screaming at another person about, oh, my kobold burnt down a town and he shouldn't have done that. Calm it down. Never be that guy. Just promise me. And let me tell you, if you are never that guy, I won't visit you. I only visit those people.
That's right. I mean, like, most of the souls that you have lying around here are pretty not great.
Don't touch them.
Oh, sorry. Well, excuse me. Getting back to the discussion. One thing that I think that you're kind of touching on that I want to get into a little bit is tone. You kind of have like setting of the campaign where it's like, oh, like, I'm running a high fantasy campaign. Your character should at least be somewhat high fantasy. But then tone is completely different. I'm actually reading up on and planning to run a game of another system.
No.
Yeah, I know.
Stop it.
I won't. You can't make me.
It better not be Pathfinder.
It's not Pathfinder. It's an interesting game called DeGenesis. It's actually free to play. You can go online and download it legally directly from their website. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful artwork, amazing lore, exceptionally terrible formatting for trying to figure out how to run the game. But overall, like, it is, I kid you not, like, it is literally 700 pages of 10-point fonts in 3 columns.
I was just laughing just because that is how you have pitched everything to me. It starts out as a sponsored ad, and then there's
Yep.
always one gripe, and it's my favorite. It's my
There
favorite
you go.
docism ever. I love Oreos. They're delicious. They're creamy in the middle,
Yep.
but they're too expensive. And you're like, okay.
Yeah. It's just, I'm a fighter. I have to fight everything to some degree.
I respect it.
The thing about the Genesis is that it takes place in a world that is post-apocalyptic in Europe. Essentially, there was something that happened that melted the ice caps, all the water flooded, and then the world went through another ice age. So now the majority of Europe is tundra, and Northern Africa is like the only hospitable place in the entire globe. And so you have these like countries and groups in Northern Africa that are actually extremely wealthy and prosperous and well organized, kind of fighting the stereotypes that a lot of people have about people in Africa, which is awesome that they fight those stereotypes. And then you have the Europeans, which are just absolutely just in a complete mess, which is amazing. But besides that point, and fighting stereotypes and our kind of norms and how we think about people.
Whoa, we're getting real. Oh my God, that's a long road.
Yeah.
Continue.
So in DeGenesis, it's so easy to die. The world is gritty. There's these hallucinogenic drugs that if you take a bad hit, then you're going to get absorbed into the wildlife. Literally, you turn into like just like a mindless drooling beast with sharp teeth if you take a bad hit.
Oh, that's awesome.
Then combat is like if you get shot once, you're probably dead, if not maimed for life. It's gritty in aspects, and a lot of the art that's horror based. And when you have SpongeBob SquarePants,
I'm ready.
roll up into Genesis, it's so bad. That is something that's like, wait a minute, we can't have SpongeBob SquarePants.
SpongeBob does not belong in Berserk. He does not belong in Dark Souls. Does not belong in Game of Thrones.
There is a tone issue there. 5e is kind of great because its tone is fairly like, oh, there's evil, but then there's good, and then there's funny, and then there's serious, and it kind of spans the spectrum, so you can kind of fit a lot of things into it. But depending on your game, 5e or DeGenesis or Pathfinder or whatever, if your tone is a certain thing, then your character might not match that tone. If your campaign's supposed to be serious, SpongeBob SquarePants ain't gonna fly. If your tone is supposed to be hilarious and fun, call in SpongeBob SquarePants, but leave your super serious, character like with heavy role playing at home. Because if you're doing kind of a funny, just laid back beer and pretzels game, that super serious character isn't going to fit that tone, even if it's based on a really cool character that you based off of from a movie or whatnot. So like considering the tone, I think, is extremely important in a campaign, no matter who you're making, if it's an original quote unquote character or if it's a character that is based off of a character that you've seen in media.
I agree. It's not much to say, but I think everybody can respect tone and aesthetics and what the vibe. Can you get with the vibe, man? What's the fucking vibe? Ooh, you get it. So I think that when it comes to tone, it's just something to keep in mind. And the DM will most likely be the one to tell you, hey, we're talking about raising cities to the ground and gnashing of teeth and wailing, and we're going to journey into the abyss. I just want you to know that Porky Pig isn't allowed. I think they're going to be the ones to tell you. I do find this idea funny, though. How about we make just right now, end of the show. I think that we've answered this question well. I think we've answered this question pretty well to the best of our ability.
Yeah, I would
wouldn't you
definitely
say?
say that. I mean, we basically said, hey, you can make the character based off of whatever you want. Just avoid being a carbon copy, be sensitive to setting and tone, and don't be that guy.
Don't be that guy. And I will be coming for this guy's soul. We answered his questions. It is known. Okay, but I just want to kind of come back to this funny idea that I had when you were talking about tone. What D&D party is the most like? Can we make something that's super tonally inconsistent based on each party member? So I can pick two. You can pick two. Here, I'll give you an example. So first one I am gonna pick will be a bard, and it will probably, I'm feeling Tweety Bird, just to go straight Looney Tunes. A bard, Tweety Bird, maybe a druid bard, Tweety Bird, kind of carbon copy. And another party member in that, I think we could have Pennywise the Clown.
Is this why I find a bunch of dead people in these white padded rooms? Is there? Excuse me, Mr. Lich. Okay.
Play along.
All right.
Don't you ever ask questions again.
All right.
So, Pennywise, give me two. Well, and also maybe their classes. Make some carbon copies that don't make sense. Do you want to throw SpongeBob in there? We can say SpongeBob's the leader of this troop. That's fine.
SpongeBob SquarePants, Warlock, Patron, the Krabby Patty. Yep.
Secret formula.
Sure. You know what? I kind of hate it, but we're going to just roll with it.
Could we make a Bikini Bottom campaign?
Oh my gosh, that would be...
Villains Plankton?
That would be... I'm kind of into that.
Oh,
I'm kind of down for that, actually. That sounds kind of fun.
To the trillions listening, do us a favor. If you're interested in us doing an episode explaining a SpongeBob campaign and how we decided to go about it, let us know. Let us know.
Instead of a game of D&D, we call it B&B, Bikini and Bottom.
I hate you.
Thank you. I'll stay in the padded room. Thanks.
Yeah, forever.
Let's see, a fourth one. Let's do a fighter monk multi-class John Wick.
Ooh, next to Tweety. I like it.
Yeah.
John Wick. I wasn't even thinking action stars.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
Because he gets the nice punching and bonus actions for, that combat stuff. And then you could go into Kensei Monk to do like the weapons and whatnot.
Right.
Then Fighter just has like decent armor and just decent fighting abilities that you could throw into the mix, like Battle Master. That would be one way that one person could really manipulate, enemies that they're fighting hand in hand.
I like it. If I was going to give one more, not to give another one, a commoner named Morty from Rick and Morty. That's it.
Oh, gee, Rick.
Wow, you can actually kind of do that, can't you?
Yeah, I guess.
I'm going to make sure you do that voice now.
Yeah, well, that's fair. But yeah, I'm down for those characters. Depending on the tone and campaign, I could definitely fit any of those characters in a campaign, right? Even Tweety. As a bard. But I mean, like, seriously, like, that would be okay. Well, like, maybe a very small Aarakocra bird person, mess with the stats a little bit to reflect the size. Yeah, I could fit that into any normal game, honestly.
I respect your can-do attitude.
Yeah.
We are reaching the end of our time. Doc, as always, I will torture you forever. Thank you for hanging out with me.
It's a pleasure as always. Just bring me a monster and, I don't know, some Doritos. I'm going to be here for a while.
You're never getting out of here. I would like to end this podcast with Slughorn's farewell to Aragog from the movie that cuts off partway through. Farewell, Aragog. Your body will decay, but your spirit will live on.
You've just been listening to DumpStat, a podcast presented by Horizon Kingdoms. Horizon Kingdoms is a Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition server that's free to play. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and join up on Discord to join in on a new adventure. For more DumpStat, be sure to find us on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe.